Sup nerds, I'm Wes.
And I'm Aaron.
We're Nevermore Gaming, and we're taking a look at the river from Days of Wonder. So the river is an intro worker placement game. It's really light, really straightforward. It's going to be a great way to teach people that haven't played a lot of board games what a worker placement is.
So if you've ever played Lords of Waterdeep, this will be like Lords of Waterdeep light. It is very simple, like you said. You could easily teach, your mom, your girlfriend.
Tom's mom.
Yeah, Tom's mom is the one we usually teach, and she's like, "What? What's going on?" In this game, you're going to be collecting resources and collecting locations that you put onto your own personal river board that we're working on. So the locations that you get are actually what kind of like build an engine in this game, which makes it a little unique. If you've played any other worker placement, it has a uniqueness to it, but it's still very simple and straightforward.
Yeah, part of the simpleness is when I was reading the rules, I kept being like, yeah, but how do you get those? Like, how do you buy them? What do you have to spend to get those? And you don't. You go there and you get one. And it's supposed to be like you're settling down this river, and so as you go along, you discover more things. So I think that's supposed to represent your expedition of your boat going down the river, and as you go, you're like, oh, there's 3 barns right here.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So as you collect them, you'll get more icons on your board. So if you have a bunch of the brick icons and you place one of your workers on the brick collecting space, you'll count up how many brick icons you have, and that's how many you get to collect. So you're like, oh, sweet, I have 4 of them, so I collect 4. And then you go, do I have enough barns to even store that? And you can store as many as you can actually fit. If you have stuff in your warehouse that you don't want to keep, you can, dump that back out here. And it's a very limited supply, so if somebody's hoarding one type of supply, it can kind of like clog it up, and people are like, oh man, I can't build this building that I really want to build. Or this, you're
building your village out.
Yeah, the villages over there are the actual thing that is kind of like a mission or an objective in any other game, where, that's where the collecting of the resources actually comes in play. You're going to collect these resources, and then at any point, you can go and build one of those houses, or you could reserve a house so that you can build it on a future turn for one fewer resource.
Yeah, and you guarantee that nobody else is going to build it out from underneath you. I think that the going to the production space is probably the most interesting thing this game has going for it, because I haven't seen many worker placement games where there wasn't just a production phase and like, okay, everyone's engine activates now, or it works for everybody. But in this, especially in a 2-player game, like every round, only one person gets to produce stone one time. So if you miss it and you need stone, like, oh well. In a 3-player game or a 4-player game, there's 2 slots there, and then whoever goes there first produces an extra stone. So it's still really tight and really limited, and you can miss out, especially if you're not the first player, which is part of why in this game, like, getting the first player token, that's all you do. A lot of games, they give you some other thing, like, well, you get a first player marker and this thing, so it kind of incentivizes you. In this game, you don't. So in a 2-player game, it didn't come up very often that we were really fighting over that. Like, every once in a while, there would be like, okay, I need this specific type of building to get my 6-point bonus. So I want, like, it's not there right now, it's my last meeple, so I'm just going to take first player so that when they refresh next round, I had the best options. But that's really the only time
I used it once because I was collecting the resources that I needed for an objective, and you'd already reserved one.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go first so I could build one of the buildings that was out there, because I didn't want you to like reserve it again out in front of me or something.
And I do think with like the reserving buildings and only one person getting to produce, like when I first heard that, I also thought, oh, this is going to be really hate drafty of like, oh, he's got 5 stones out there, I'm going to go produce stones just because I don't want him to get all those stones. But it's so tight, and like you have to be so deliberate with every action you take. Unless that hate draft also helps you, you're really screwing yourself if that's the way you're playing. And now you do want to pay attention, like if we both want to produce stone, like pay attention to that and make sure that you produce stone first. But if it's not going to help you, then don't waste your time.
The one other thing that you're trying to accomplish is building columns of the same type of the lands. So there's a plains, a mountain, a desert, and a rocky mountain. I'm not sure what the types were, but there's 4 types, and if
mountain, forest, clay, place, and plains.
if you can get 3 of them in a column, but you don't get to like just place them as you want. You have to place them down the river, so you kind of have to like time it. You're like, okay, if I collect this mountain first, I'm gonna have to wait 7 more turns before I get another mountain. If I'm gonna to put in that column, I could put it in another column. But like if you break up the column, you don't have them in the same like you have a mountain on top and then you go forest and then mountain. You're not gonna get bonus points for it. Like it's not as efficient.
And there are ways that you can rearrange those tiles later on in the game. There's a spot on the board that's limited, but you can go there and move stuff around. Or there's some actual just land tiles that you can build that let you move them. But that again takes a whole nother turn to do that. So unless you have to, it's much more efficient to do it in order. And efficiency is really one of the key things in this game. Another unique thing in this game is, in most worker placement games, there's ways to unlock additional workers as the game progresses. And this game does have that. When you build your second building, you get a 5th worker. But the other thing it has is that you start losing workers the more land you build. I guess you're like, as you settle more, your workers settle down to create their own farms and stop working for you. So the faster you go along, where you are going to be producing a lot more, having more storage, and that much better off in your ability to build things, you have that many less workers. So if you're not really careful, you could get down to having like only 3 workers left, and your opponent could have 5 workers left. I think at the end of the game, once you fill your whole board up, you have 1 worker left. Assuming that you've built a building. I guess, hypothetically, you could fill your entire board and have never built a building.
Yeah.
And then you'd have no workers.
This game definitely hits a sweet spot. It's like very quick for experienced gamers, but is also accessible for new gamers. It's like so good. We played one game, like after playing a couple times, we're like, let's see how quickly we can play it. And we're just like, action, place a tile, do this. We're just like going. Like once he placed his, it was almost like that chess style where you like hit the timer.
Yeah.
Like you could play it this way because it's like there's only a certain amount of places you can go, and you're just like, okay.
Especially in a 2-player game, things get locked out so quickly that like your first move you have a lot of options, but by your last meeple, there's only like 2 or 3 places to go. So it's not like you're sitting there like, where should I go?
Yeah, it's not like Lords of Waterdeep where you're unlocking more and more places as you go. Like this, it's always the same, and you start losing people, so then your choices do matter more. The components are awesome, like all the wooden meeples and the wooden bits. This looks like 3 logs stacked up for the wood. The rocks are cool. I think the turkeys are awesome. That's
turkeys
the
are fantastic.
Coolest thing. Like, kind of want to paint their gobblers red and paint them brown. I guess I don't know.
That was unique to make the wild resource a turkey.
Yeah,
like
wild turkey.
I'm glad they actually did a thing with it, and they didn't just make like a 3-wheel disc or a 3-color disc. And they're like, that's just a wild. That could be whatever you want.
Yeah.
Like,
no, you trade that turkey for food, and people will give you whatever resource you need. In a way, it's really cool that they double-sided the board so that if you're playing with a 2-player game, you don't have like a board that's like segmented off where it's like, okay, don't use this if you're playing 2 players, and don't use this if you're playing 2 players. It's just like you flip it on 2-player side, you're good to go. You flip it on the 3 and 4-player side, it's good to go. There's like the only kind of like setback is like you put a little less tiles in the purchasing area.
Yeah, in a 3-player game, you have a couple things that say this is only for 4, but
it's just that one spot. Everything else is like all the rest of the locations are unlocked. So it's like, I think it's very clean design. All the icons make sense. Everything's nice. I like it. Nice thick cardboard. Can't complain.
It's definitely a really light game, and I think I'm not saying that in a negative way. It's just in what I'm going for. Like, I think that with like me, you, and Tom, this is not the worker placement game that we'll be playing. I think it might see some table time when we want something really quick, but most likely this will see play with us if we bring in a non-gamer to hang out with us. If someone brings a friend or whatever that's like not quite into board gaming or whatever, and that's where I see this hitting with us. However, I think this game is going to have a huge market. Like, when I really stopped thinking about it, or started thinking about it, and said, okay, well, it's Days of Wonder. And so if you look, there are people who did, like, Ticket to Ride. And I think that this game is going to fit perfect into that market, which is what they're really going for.
Yeah.
Like, this game is going to fly off the shelves at big box stores with people who, like, play a couple of games like, have you guys heard of this game called Catan? It's great. Who knew board games were cooler than Monopoly? Like, for that market, this game is going to be fantastic. And even in, like, the mainstream board gaming market, I think this is going to have people that love it. It's a little light for my taste. Not that I didn't enjoy it, but just the more gaming I do, the more meat and potatoes I want in my gaming. And this is a really good salad.
So if any of that sounded awesome to you and you want to pick up a copy, we'll have a purchase link in the description box down below. You should definitely pick it up. I recommend it. Wes recommends it. We all recommend it. It's a great game, especially if you're looking for a light intro worker placement game. It fits perfectly in there.
And whatever you do, make sure you subscribe to our channel so you'll never be bored.
Down in a van by the river! Rest in peace, Chris Farley.